Rune, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you, Tom. It's doing very good. Very good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good. It's me and Liam running in tandem. Liam's running shotgun today during the podcast, first time.
First
So
time
go nice,
ever.
right?
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. He's done all his research. He's been up all night researching you, like your background, Varjo. He's been in the company accounts, looking at the stock price. Like he knows more about it than you know, right?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Some nerves on
yeah.
Liam's face.
There'll be a real surprise to find out. I did do some research, but probably not as intense as I probably should have done. As it is my first time, a little bit nervous. So
We'll let you off.
okay, thank you guys.
So, Rune, we've been speaking for a little while now, and I think the first time I got in touch was actually when I noticed your job title.
Okay.
So you work at Varjo, which is known for its VR and XR headsets, which
Yep.
any sim racer, any gamer listening will know exactly what that is and can imagine what that entails. But the thing that stood out to me was that your job title was head of sim racing at a VR company. Now, it seems crazy niche. So, like, how did that come about? How long has that job existed? Are you the first to fill that role?
Yes, I'm the first to fill out a role in Varjo, and I wouldn't say it wasn't a title that was announced in somewhat. So it's my main title has been business development manager. So I work with developing and expanding our business, and then through that I kind of combine, like, I've had sim racing now for a hobby for numerous years, and now being able to have the opportunity to expand our business. So when around the same time I joined Varjo 2.5 years ago, I think it is now, about the same time we were announcing or releasing the Varjo Aero headset, which is like aimed for consumers as well as professional businesses as well. And then looking into that, we were traditionally quite heavy in the flight sim market due to we have a lot of the professional companies like Boeing, Airbus, Lockheed Martin as customers in the mixed reality space. So I saw opportunity there to combine hobbies and work, and started to work with different companies such as Simicube, Next Level Racing, and a few others as well with partnerships and getting the headset out there in the public for people to experience and getting truly immersed and like helping them trying to get or experience something really cool, such as like ADAC Sim Racing Expo last year. So
Yeah, no, that ADAC Sim Racing Expo was the first time that I had come across Varjo. I saw you on the Simicube stand, and obviously everyone was really excited over at that stand because not only did they have Varjo, which was kind of coined as like this new VR sim racing headset that was going to dominate the kind of the high end of sim racing headsets. It was perfectly tuned for sim racing, right? That's what we were hearing around the expo hall. Obviously, Simicube also had their first of a kind force feedback pedal set. So
yeah.
it was a very kind of like innovative, like future space at Expo. So I kind of got excited about Varjo, and that was kind of like the first time that I started following it. And I'm really keen to find out more about Varjo, how the company started. I know it didn't necessarily start in the B2C space, and then kind of what your role is and and why so much focus on the sectors rather than just like we're VR, we sell VR headsets. It seems like you're very focused on the two different sectors that you're attacking here with flight sims and racing, right? But before all that, many of our listeners, if they're listening to a sim racing podcast, as we said before, they're pretty into sim racing, right? And so a lot of people have some kind of aspiration, some kind of dream of one day working in sim racing. Not everyone, but a lot of people that we speak to do somehow want to know how they can end up doing what they love day in, day out in the sim racing space, right? And that's exactly what you're doing. So take us back to the beginning of your kind of professional life. How did you end up in a role that has two titles, but one of them is head of sim racing?
Yeah. So that's super, I would say super random. I have to be honest on that. So my background really is in construction industry. So I worked as a construction worker for about 3 years time. And I grew up on a farm, countryside. Like I don't have anything like family related or background related in technology. I've always been interested in technology, gaming, and motorsport in general. But my background is construction industry or company as construction worker. I went to BIM technical school here in Oslo, Norway. And after that, I was lucky enough to land a job at Ramble, which is like a consultancy company, global company. So I was fortunate enough to work with combining the practical experience that I had with the like technical or software knowledge. and been able to work on like 3D models around Europe. I was in Qatar for a while working on football stadiums for the World Cup last year, which was
sweet,
pretty cool at like a 19, 20-year-old or however at that point, which was really cool. I worked more than a couple of years in AF Group, who's like a general contractor, combining and taking and working on how to use digital tools in the either design or building process of a building or infrastructure project. And in that period, I came into VR, like I tested VR back when the DK2 was released, 2013, something right, like that, from Oculus, like the first one. And I found that to be really cool at that time. And then now being able to combine technology VR together with actually practical use cases. So at the same time I started to play around with VR in AF Gripen, I got the opportunity to take a course or like a certification on Stanford University within like VDC, which is like Virtual Design and Construction, which is like a 1-year course that you take. And then you do some research and documentation on the sort of findings you do. So instead of just like adding a new tool, actually documented the process and the findings on how to use VR. So I was really hooked on VR. I was still working in construction industry. I really enjoyed the software that we're using. So I actually ended up joining that software company here in Norway, which was a startup at that point with 12 to 15 people, I think. Really cool team. The technology was like way ahead of its time. Super cool. At that point, COVID hit like a few months afterwards, and then going out and selling VR headsets when people were afraid to touch like door handles, like they wouldn't take the headsets on their face and meeting up physically at all. So at that point, we started talking with Varjo and doing something like some cool collaborations or seeing what we could do together. That ending up the startup being acquired by Varjo 2.5, 3 years ago now. So when I started in Varjo, I had kind of like a business development role in Dimension 10, or like the VR startup. And then I got the same sort of role in Varjo, and I got pretty like free hands, or how you put it. Like I could do a bit of research in development. I was still working like heavily then within the AEC construction industry. But then I also saw the opportunity to expand into like B2C area, especially with the Aero, but also working with professional motorsport teams within like NASCAR, Formula One, GT3, and similar. So I don't really have any like formal education, and it's been, I wouldn't say random that I ended up where I am, but it's been like always learning something new from the different positions or the different areas I've been working on, and seeing how you can combine and implement that, and kind of like working on something that is fun.
Wow. Because I was going to say that one of the things I noticed, you said that sim racing started for you as kind of a hobby in the beginning. Do you want to explain kind of a bit more in depth what you mean by just a hobby? Because, there's people who just race or play racing video games like Forza, and then there's people who are already like jumping into, I'm going to get a pedal, I'm going to get a wheel, maybe a VR headset. So just explain a little bit kind of the depth of this side hobby of racing.
Sure. So I think the first like introduction I had with like a motorsport game or like a driving game or like Need for Speed Underground, like the first one, and then or Need for Speed series in general. But
Great
I think
soundtracks.
it's really cool soundtracks. And then I think when Need for Speed Underground 2 came out on PlayStation 2, I think it were.
Yeah.
I got like a steering wheel, like no force feedback or anything from my parents for Christmas one year. And I played around with that, but I was so young at that time, so I didn't really like get the hang of it at all.
And you don't use a brake in that game, right? You just,
no,
you
just like
it's just handbrake or NOS. It's like it's either
exactly,
it's all
and then
on or all off.
Yeah, and just like I remember, like just driving and listening to the turbo sound, like it was like it was the most like amazing sound back then. I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. But yeah, fast forwarding a few years, I got an Xbox. I played Forza, like Motorsport and Horizon and stuff like that, mostly with a controller. I did get a steering wheel at some point there as well, but like Forza and wheelset has never been like good friends, I think. So I played around with that Forza. Then I think Formula One 2017, 16 or something like that. I started playing the Formula One from Codemasters. I did get from my then girlfriend, now wife, a steering wheel and pedals, like a Logitech D920 for Christmas.
That's
First year we
why
were together.
she's gone from girlfriend to wife,
That's
right?
yep.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, she's been supporting me, and she thinks it's fun as well. So it's cool. No, but I'm super lucky there, and that kind of like started off being a bit more interested, not doing anything online, just playing around F1 games. Did bit of Forza still, but like mainly F1. Found out then like, hey, I don't really like the feel or the sense of the steering wheel. And then I was like, maybe if I get myself an F1 wheel like to match the one in game, that would be cooler. But I couldn't really find anything that was suited for the G920 at the time. So I got myself a 3D printer. And since I have some experience in the design and engineering from construction company or industry, it was fairly easy for me to learn new tools to design, print my own wheel. A few months after I got the first G920.
That's very cool. The wheel didn't exist, so you were like, I'll just print it.
I'll just print it myself, make it myself. And then it was like a super cheap, super small printer. I think I had to print it either like 4 or 6 pieces and then like hot glue it together to make it work, because of the printer were like so small and basic. And from there, COVID hit. And then, as everyone else got into more sim racing, I actually saw that, okay, there's more to sim racing and motorsport than just like playing around on console. They actually have online racing, it has streaming, and seeing then like Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, like Kelvin van der Linde, all these guys like jumping on and doing all these online competitions. It like really opened my eyes towards like, okay, there's something called iRacing and online racing. And at that point,
once you're in the ecosystem, there's no
no
getting out.
Yeah, no getting out.
Exactly. Then it's like getting into like the never-ending upgrade game. I think around 2 weeks into iRacing, I found like, I really suck. I need better gear to improve my lap times. So I ended up getting a Fanatec wheel and pedals at that time, Club Sport wheel and pedals, which worked quite good. I had it for 2 years, 3 years or something like that. It was quite fun, but it's still like, I didn't really, there were some things about it that I didn't enjoy. It was still like, it wasn't a toy, but it still felt like a toy. Some like sort of, I don't have any like real life motorsport experience at all, so I have no idea how like a race car feels on track, but still for me it was a bit like a toyish feeling. And then ended up doing what I should have done, like buy ones, cry ones sort of things. I got the Huse Karlstad pedals, semi-cube wheelbase.
Yeah, you went all the way to the top, right?
I went all the way. And then you have what was the thing that I really enjoyed with Fanatec was that you could get all these sort of like add-on wheels, super easy to buy. They're not crazy priced, and you can get like round wheels, steering, Formula One wheels or whatnot. And then what I experienced with the semi-cube wheelbase is that you also, or the system is that you really have to pay like same price for the steering wheel as you did on the wheelbase, kind of, to get something proper. So then I took back I bought a new 3D printer, watched a bit of YouTube, learned how to like solder PCB boards or like circuit boards and stuff. So I ended up building my own like a replica of the Lamborghini GT3, like Huracan wheel.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
That's very cool. Do you know what I've noticed, right, doing this podcast? And, you know, I suppose the episodes that jump to mind are Hanu, CEO of SimiCube, and Neville, CEO of Vasaro. There seems to be this like intrinsic link between product design, like hands-on hardware design, and sim racing. There seems to be some kind of thread that joins people who are kind of product minded to sim racing. And I'm trying to think what it is that jumps out about sim racing that seems to attract people who are kind of really kind of product minded, like, people, soldering PCB boards and printing wheels, and like Neville does a lot of like building with his hands. Like Hanu started off, they were just building motors before it was sim racing. And what do you think it is about sim racing that seems to appeal to people who love kind of product and electrical engineering?
I think it's endless what you can do, really. If you have a 3D printer, a soldering iron, and then access to AliExpress, or if you want to start up like the basic stuff, just buy cheap components from China that doesn't cost a lot if you mess it up. And I don't know. There's, at least for me, it's always been on the like creating something myself. I really enjoy that, and I remember hearing stories from when I was a kid as well. I was taking things apart, like radios or what it was, just taking things apart and seeing how it works, and then seeing if there's anything I could do to improve that, for example. So I don't know if there's something that comes from like our childhood or the curiousness and how to improve products or experiences or what it is. But
it's kind of I wonder if it's something to do with the fact that sim racing is kind of the most, I would say, probably along with flight sims, I guess, like the most tactile of any type of gaming, in that it's the only gaming where you feel it in so many different ways, dimensions, effects, even from rumble effects through a steering wheel to weight on a brake pedal. Like you really feel what you're playing. So I wonder if it's that kind of like tactile, hands-on appeal that sim racing has that seems to marry product design and engineers to the sport, or to the to that sector of gaming.
Yeah, absolutely, could be that as well. I do flight sim as well as a
Right.
hobby, not as much as racing, but I'm doing like the 3D printing loop. I don't know. There's something about like trying to replicate in the game what you really want to do in the real life. Like you can't just like.
There's like a goal, isn't there?
Yeah, it is. Like at least for me, I can't just go and get a pilot license or start flying. Same in a race car. Like you can go to Nürburgring, rent a car, and go out there and crash it if you want to. But still, it's like it's quite or not, but still quite terrifying though.
Yeah.
Like doing go karting is fun and all that, but still like being in, like especially for me racing in VR, like you feel like you're actually inside the race when things are going on. Like you have the, I was to say, like the haptic feedback with transducers, belt tensioners, motion setup, like all these things that really helps on the immersion and really makes it a lot more accessible for me and a lot of other people as well.
So let's dive into VR then. Obviously that'll be, it's your bread and butter, what Varjo is all about, right? And I'm really curious to hear about the XR experience and the seemingly massive strides forwards that VR seems to have taken in the last few months, and kind of when you look at the jump between now and what people are predicting in 2024 versus the difference between 2020 and 2021, it's massive. It seems to be on this exponential growth curve of development, right? But before all of that, what is it about VR, not necessarily sim racing related, but what is it about VR? You said earlier when you were talking about your career path that you got really hooked to VR. Like, why? What is it about VR that hooks you?
I think it's the sort of experience that you get while you are inside VR. If that's a sim racing game, or if it's like Beat Saber, or like any game, you really get like a different, or you get the sense of feeling that you are somewhere else and that you're experiencing something unique, I think. Like for me, I played around with like the old Oculus, like Quest and Quest 2 and Vives and whatnot. But for me, it all never felt like it wasn't a sort of a gimmick. It was really cool to do for like 10, 15 minutes, and then it got nauseous or DC or something like that. So I think it's a part of like from our perspective, like we come from like, as I said, like heavy industry simulation and training, and it is like at a price point that is like not accessible for a lot of people, and I get that, but it also ties into technology. When you see like mobile phones of a couple of years, like it hasn't really involved that much as a few 3 years now, but seeing when the iPhone or the touchscreen were firstly launched, because that technology were available at the same time. Same with 3D printing, and it's a bit similar now with VR as well. You see more and more manufacturers coming up, and equality being better and more accessible for a lot of people, and that's mostly due to like the component prices being more available. Like you can build this super crazy headset, but if it costs 15, 20, 30,000 euros, it will be super limited amount of people that will buy it. So that's why when the Oculus came out, it was super popular, but it wasn't really that good in terms of quality. And then you're reducing the product quality because you want to have it more accessible to a lot of people. So I feel when the Aero was launched 2 years ago, we really didn't want to, what do you call it, like neglect on the quality. Like we want like Varjos, compromise. So Varjo's vision is about always having the best VR or XR headset out there in the market. And yeah, it comes with a price, but similar with everything else in sim racing, it doesn't necessarily make you quicker or faster, but in the end, it can make you having a better experience over time. So now racing in VR for myself, or when I started joining Varjo, I like played around with Oculus and stuff before that, and I could do 15 minutes races, and I was sweaty and foggy inside the headset. I was like, I'm not doing this. But then when the Aero was launched, like, oh my god, this is really really good. Like the sharpness and the quality of the displays were like unmatched with everything else I've never ever seen in VR, and also with active cooling that actually cools your pupils inside the headset.
Right.
Like I could do like 2-hour races in VR like without any issues.
Gamers are sweaty enough already, right? Without without introducing
Yeah.
us sweating from the face.
Yeah.
Wow. So breaking that down, what was your because you said you got into VR kind of first. So what was your kind of first gateway into the VR, like equipment wise? Because as someone who has no idea anything about VR, like educate me a little bit on like where's the best places to look, what avenue should I be looking, and then eventually like justifying is it the Aero, the most recent one for
Yeah, the
VR?
Aero is the
Yes.
most recent one that is available for consumers. Yeah, I think like I tested VR first time in 2012 when I went to Speaking Technical School actually, and tested it then with the Oculus DK2, which is like a closed beta or open beta. I don't know. It wasn't public at least. You needed to know someone who knew someone in
Knew a guy
Oculus
that
or
knew a
something.
guy.
Yeah, to get it. And then you sort of have had the evolution of Oculus headsets up until Meta or Facebook bought them a few years back. HP, I've had a fairly good headset at the time, and then Valve Index. There's been a few good headsets out there, but never more than like 3-4 that have been like okay-ish. And I would say VR really didn't hit like mass market, or how you put it, before like Meta or Oculus was like the Quest was released, just because it made it much more accessible to a lot of people. You had like, as with a mobile phone, App Store built in, super easy to get games working, super easy to connect with friends and play with other people online. And then looking on what we did like 2 years ago, like there was the Valve Index, which I think was the best one at that time, and it's still a really good headset. But really, we really launched something that was like ahead of its time. And what we see now, 2 years later, it's still like, in terms of image quality and overall experience, I think it's still the best headset out there.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in the VR versus XR, not versus, but the XR thing is absolutely blowing my mind, and I've watched a lot of YouTube videos about it. But before that, right, and I promise we will talk about Aero stuff in like particular and where Varjo's going. But when you read up on VR, there's a couple of phrases that always come up. Okay, and I feel like I've read enough to be able to ask the questions. I don't necessarily know the best answers, but I imagine a lot of people are looking at VR headsets, and there's all these side by side comparisons. So one thing is your hertz, right? Your refresh rate on a headset. The other is your field of view. The other is the number of pixels. So the ratio, what definition that you're looking in, that you're looking at, and I suppose the screen type as well, OLED or whatever. But then the other one is the oh my goodness, what's it called? I want to call it the shutter door effect. I'm saying that wrong.
Screen door effect.
Screen door effect, yeah. So there's these 4 things, right, that when you're looking at VR, these seem to always come up. Whenever you look at a Reddit, it'll be like, this one's good for frame rate, this one's good for field of view, this one's better because the screen is clearer and it's 4K versus 2K, or it's 8K versus 4K, but this one has screen door effect. Like, when you're making a decision, bearing in mind that like not everybody will be able to get to a Varjo price point, but what do you think is most important when people are going through that hardware journey?
I think like, as it is with everything in sim racing, like budgets is like, you should have like some sort of budget. You're probably gonna end overspending on it anyway.
Yeah.
But like the thing about VR as well, like you need to have a good VR headset, but you also need to have a beefy computer, or like a graphics card or GPU to run it. But I think like the main thing you should think about while getting a VR headset is comfort. Because no matter how great any of those features are, if you can't use it more than 10 to 15 minutes, then it's just like a gimmick or like a cool toy that you can bring up now and then.
But
if you
it
have
weighs,
something,
right?
Weighs or like as you said, like the screen door, like you do actually feel like you're inside something, or you're looking through like two toilet paper rolls, or that was the experience like with the first VR headsets back in like 2012, 13. It were like looking through like two small holes, and it felt like super strange.
I remember the first VR headset, and you're going to laugh, right, that I ever had. My mum, and she's listening to the podcast. I don't know if she listens to my podcast. I assume she doesn't. But if she does, hi, Mum. But I remember talking about VR, and I was telling her about sim racing and stuff. And I was saying that you can also do it in VR, and it's perfectly, like, sim racing is perfectly suited for VR because you're not really moving around. So you don't have that thing of, I'm not actually walking around the living room. All that kind of like disconnect. You just sat in one position. You're in the rig. It's perfect. And then she must have like taken note of that because the next birthday or Christmas, she bought me a VR headset. Right, the VR headset was one of those like cardboard things that you fold up into the right shape with a strip, and then you put your phone in the front. It was like, oh, thanks, Mum. I don't know how I would connect this to iRacing, but like, I imagine like we have come so far since those days. But I imagine the early days weren't too dissimilar to that kind of just very, very basic flat screen.
Yeah, and it worked great. It made it VR a lot more accessible to people because everyone had a mobile phone, and you can slide it in there, and you somewhat can get like the sense of space or 3D inside those anyway.
Yeah. Now,
but still, it's a grainy experience for sure.
Yes, it was. But I appreciated the present. It was good fun. Still have it. Thanks, Mum. So something else I noticed is that there definitely is now a trend, I guess, as technology improves towards smaller, lighter headsets. Now, the I think it's called the Pimax is quite big. The Varjo is a bit smaller. But then comes along, and I saw this on the Boosted Media channel, who is coming on the podcast very soon, which I'm excited for. Big Screen Beyond. Have you heard of these guys?
Yeah.
So they brought out what essentially look like swimming goggles. They're absolutely tiny. Now, I'm assuming in order to achieve that, you have to compromise, as you were saying earlier, on other factors, whether it's frame rate, whether it's screen type, whether it's the definition, etc., to be able to achieve that kind of compact form factor. But do you think that ultimately VR, like the race, the real race in VR, is to get as small and light as non-imposing as possible?
I think it's depending on who you ask. If you ask for the mass consumer market, yeah, for sure, you want to have something that is like super lightweight, easy to wear. But then if you look into more the training and simulation or the business side of things, then it's more about actually getting the best quality and replicating the real world as close to possible.
Yeah, and you just put up with the kind of the weight or the inconvenience, and I guess it's all relative, right? So we're not talking about a huge amount of weight. Like even like the Varjo Aero is it looks. I'm saying big. It's not big. I'm not saying it's not too big, but it's it's bigger than a pair of goggles or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So but even then they're made to be super light, and actually even we had the Oculus Quest 2, which is really heavy and really bulky. And actually, I think you have to race for like an hour or so before you start to kind of notice it, and it starts to, your neck starts to sag a little bit. So these are all really first world problems, right? I think we should remember the level of technology we have.
Yeah. Then you should look into if you're doing VR, you need to do the same training of the necks as the Formula 1 drivers.
Yes.
Like using like the neck band and doing like all these exercises.
Well, I do that anyway, right? I do
that anyway, then they're going to be exactly killer driver in VR.
Yeah,
but as you say, like, but as like with the Oculus, like it has a built-up battery, so it's like there's pros and cons with wireless or not. Like the Aero is like it's wired to the computer, so it doesn't have the battery or the extra weight inside the headset. So there are like pros and cons between different headsets and what sort of use cases you are while using it. If you are either way stationary in the sim racing rig and you have cables going to your headphones or whatnot, it doesn't really matter if it's wireless or not. But if you're doing more like an open landscape, walking around inside a room sort of something, you would prefer wireless, yeah.
course. Yeah. So just going back to those kind of 4 factors that I spoke about, because I think a lot of people listening to this would love some real practical advice on buying, right? Do you think, a lot of people say that anything over 144 hertz on a monitor, you're not going to notice the difference. When it comes to VR, is there a similar thing where like, anything over 4K, you're not going to notice the difference? Anything beyond 120 degrees field of view, you're not going to notice the difference. Like, is there kind of a sweet spot that people should look for as a minimum?
Yeah, it might be. It's a good question. I think like the one thing you should, if you're talking about specification numbers, there's one thing to, like the field of view is one thing, but I think what's called PPD, so like pixels per degree, like if it's higher than, is it 37, then you're not able to see the individual pixels.
Right.
So with the Oculus, I think it has like 21 or something. You can clearly see each pixel inside the headset. And then you have the Aero, which is like 39 or something. You can't really see the pixels. And then with the XR-VR3, like the professional headset we have, it's 69 or 79. And it's just like crystal clear. It's like 8K monitor or 4K monitor, or how you would try to compare it.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
So I would say, PPD, but like in terms of like field of view, I don't know, above 100 at least, 105. I think a helmet is around 120 if you compare it like a real life motorsport helmet.
That's really interesting. I guess with sim racing, you have that almost like that caveat of like, yeah, okay, we're 130 degrees and this other one does 140. But actually, if you're really all about immersion and performance, as you seem to be saying in all your other Reddit posts, then you can't see more than 120 in a helmet. So like, what do you want?
Yeah. Exactly.
It's kind of
no, but like some of the sort of the feedback we have gotten from some of the like Formula 1 teams and NASCAR teams as well, like they are really impressed by the headset that we have. It's very similar field of view, or like the width and the height inside the headset to actually having a real racing helmet, which definitely helps on like getting the like real experience and improvements. And we also see that most of them, they're building the headset inside real helmets anyway when they are inside the simulators. So like weight isn't really a factor anymore because you already have a huge helmet on you, and
that's very cool.
Replicating like the real race scenarios. So.
Now, I wonder, is there a product line there? The first VR provider to come out with an actual helmet that you put on as a sim racer? I mean, I don't know what my girlfriend would say if she walked in on me sim racing and I had a helmet on. But it feels like in the next 5 years, someone's going to try that, right? And you can have custom lids and...
I mean, you could do it, but the thing about VR is it's so individual. Like the head, like this, it sounds weird, but like the size of the heads and the distance between the pupils, or like the center of your pupils, it really does matter in VR. So in terms of helmet, I was like with the big screen VR or beyond, or what it's called. No, that one you need to measure your points before sending it in because it's custom made.
Yeah.
To get that to work actually in that small form factor. And then when you look into the other headsets, they even have manual or automatical adjustments of the lenses.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a bunch of things to think of. So I wouldn't say we wouldn't see it. There are already people that create helmets for like the Oculus and stuff, but it's more like as a gimmick, cool to have sort of features. We have a few of the Formula 1 teams like taking a jigsaw like just around the helmet, putting the VR inside there, just like foaming around it.
Yeah.
And it looks absolutely ridiculous from the outside, but when you actually have the helmet on inside,
it's pretty immersive.
Like all the drivers, they're like, yeah, forget like the instant to take the headset on. Like I'm at the racetrack. I can't really differentiate what's real or what's virtual.
That is very cool, and it kind of blows my mind like how far we've come. And not to bang on about a different VR brand when we've invited you on, but I did blow my mind when I saw that demo of the big screen beyond, and you get an app and you kind of scan your face with the app, and then it measures your face and then measures the distance between your pupils and then molds so that there's no light coming in. And then I presume the pupils is so that you're focusing on the sweet spot right in front of you. So the rest is kind of slightly blurred to give the depth perception.
Yeah, it's more about how they scale it up. So in those, or most of the VR headset, you have like a sweet spot, and then you use the shape of the glass or like the lens itself to help you scale that screen up inside. So even though the screen inside the VR headset might be like quite tiny, but then with the sort of lens, you kind of make it feel larger, so it feels actually bigger than it is inside the headset.
It's honestly fascinating, absolutely baffling how much development technology is now available to gamers. Like, and again, not to bang on back in my day, but if I remember like my Sega Mega Drive, where I was like getting the cartridge and blowing the dust out and putting it in and loading up whatever I was like, the amount of work that has gone in to get us where we are now is mind blowing, and thank God for it, right?
But also like this, I wouldn't say like the sad thing, but one unfortunate thing is like the complexity rises as well. Like one thing with like, not to bash on other headsets, but like with the big screen, for example, it works, and I think Boosted Media or Wilford noticed this as well, is that it works really well for yourself, but if you have a friend over and he wants to try out the headset, it might not fit him or her at all.
Yeah.
So then you're not able to share that experience with anyone else. So again, like it depends on what your main use cases are, but like having friends over here, like just put on the headset, it automatically adjusts everything, and you just like put it on straight in the rig, and you're good to go. So,
and something that I realized, and I think we were talking about in the office recently, was with sim racing specifically, right? Even if you imagine, right, you're sat in a rig and you haven't got a VR headset, right, and you've got an ultra wide monitor. Now, a lot of the bottom third of the screen is the car, right, the cockpit, which is kind of irrelevant to the racing. The top third is the sky, maybe even a bit more. So again, irrelevant. And then you have this tiny slice in the middle of the screen where you can see the track and the barriers and the stands, right? But the stands and the barriers and the runoff isn't relevant. So you've got this tiny bit, even on a screen, right? Even in an ultra wide, you've probably got about 2 inches by 6 inches in front of you that you're actually kind of playing, right? The rest is all just noise and context, but you're playing this tiny bit. That's baffling. Now, apply that to VR, and then imagine like it's a matchstick. Like it's the tiniest amount of physical space where all of the gaming happens in this headset, in these thousands and thousands of pixels crammed into a space, no bigger than like a 1p piece, and that is where all of the enjoyment comes from. Like when you think about it like that, it's bonkers.
Absolutely. And one thing which is really cool, and one thing that I see, at least from my own personal experience with VR as well, as you can actually turn your head and you can see the cars around you when you're like into the braking zones and stuff. You can't really do that with a monitor unless you're like moving the camera and stuff, but then you're messing up your braking points because it just or messes up your field of view. So there are like countless benefits on doing VR in terms of like space as well, like having a triple monitor setup or like ultra wide. It takes like a lot of physical space, and for myself that lives in like a fairly small apartment as well, I can't fit a triple screen setup, or even though I wanted to do it. So for me, VR was really the only choice.
So now let's get back a bit more into Varjo and a bit on that side of things. So could you explain your favorite product that you've kind of helped push and release, and why it is your favorite?
Yeah, I haven't helped on publishing any products, but I would say like the XR3, which we'll call it. So back to your question, Tom, on like the VR, XR, MR, like what they all are. Like VR is virtual reality or closed inside something. You can't see the outside world. MR, which is mixed reality, and XR, which is extended reality. Same kind of. And then you have AR, which is like all overhead, or like Pokemon Go. You can see the real world, but then you can see like add something on top. But with the XR, you're able to have cameras in front of your headset, so you can do fully VR if you want to. So when doing like a sim racing session, you are like fully immersed in VR, but then you can like either draw around or you use green screen behind your steering wheel. So you're actually able to see your own physical hands, button box, like shifter and everything inside the sim, which is pretty cool, I think. So then if you have a cool steering wheel or a replica steering wheel or something that looks cool and fancy, you're actually able to see it. But if you race VR and you buy like a Gomez wheel for €2,500, you're not actually able to see it in VR. You just feel the buttons on it.
Right. I remember thinking the exact same thing at Expo 21 when Fanatec came out with their Bentley wheel. and obviously they have the circular screen. I don't think they've released it yet, but they showed it off in 2021, and you had the circular screen in the middle. That as you rotated the wheel, the circular screen kind of almost gimbaled. I think it was meant to look like it was just kind of like swinging, so that it was always
floating
vertical,
in
right?
the center, or
right. And it was nuts. I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then I tried a VR, and I was like, oh my god, I would love to have the Bentley with the VR. Oh wait, if I've got the VR on, I'm not going to be able to see the wheel. And then I thought, well, forget the screen. What about all the buttons? If you're doing adjusting traction control, ABS, engine mode, DRS, KERS, if you're in an older car, or cycling through the menu to do a pit stop, like you lose all of that if you're in VR. So when I first saw the application of XR in sim racing, I was like, well, this is the future. This is absolutely the future. And I was kind of looking into it and realized that there's a bit of manual setting up. You draw a zone around where everything is. That's cool. I wonder how much that kind of drifts if you have to keep kind of updating that. The green screen, great. But then you obviously need a green screen there, not in front of it, which means you can't. A lot of people put their wheel overlapping their monitor, so there's a bit of setting up. And then I assume that eventually, with the application of AI, the AI will just know that's a wheelbase, that's a wheel, that's the cockpit, and you don't even need to draw it. It's like, okay, I know what all this stuff is. I'll show you that, but I won't show you the rest.
Yeah, I think definitely that's the direction that we're going now. And I think some of the videos that you might refer to might come from us, and I think that's some early developer, someone just playing around before I'm joining Varjo, and I said we can't do it like that. It might look cool, but for us that doing it it doesn't work. But at least here at home, I just have a piece of cardboard and a green cloth glued to it that I just put behind my wheel when I want to do XR here at home.
Yeah, it's very cool, and it's also given streamers a really cool opportunity to create some amazing content. And actually, I'm about to move into a flat, and I was thinking, ultra wide, definitely not triple screens, but maybe even ultra wide's a bit tight. Now I'm thinking, do I just have a tiny monitor for just starting it up, and do I go down the VR route with the green screen? Because that sounds incredibly immersive, right? And I guess when you're marketing your products, you do a huge amount of research about the personas of who it is who would buy your equipment. Now, I guess VR and VR XR, I guess you're kind of ticking two boxes, and I'd be really interested to see which one you think is the focus, or if it's equally both. But I think VR, of course, gives immersion, right? And I've always thought the sim racers are split into those who want the immersion and the experience, and those who are doing it for performance, either for esports or for motorsport, right? Those are the two groups.
Yeah.
One is massive, the other is a bit smaller but far more committed and higher spending, right? Now, VR and XR, I would argue, gives you both immersion and an element of performance. How do you market yourself to sim racers? Do you say that you're all about giving people an immersive experience, or about people being able to improve their performance by immersing themselves in it?
I would say both. We actually do. I think we put the focus more, or maybe on the enjoyment side, immersive side, because the easiest to understand. And then you have the last 5% of the aliens and those that are racing really quick that wants to have it for performance, that want to get into as well. Then we talk more open about it. We don't really talk with the Formula 1 team. So, you're getting immersed this or that. It's eye tracking. We can extract data from the headset. You can use the mixed reality to play around and move around buttons on the physical steering wheels to create a better wheel or better ergonomics. Then it's more on the performance side. So it depends on who you're targeting in terms of gamers or simulator users. Of course, then it's more on the immersive side, experiencing it. Yeah. And then on professional side, it's all about the analytics data and improving, getting that small benefits.
That makes total sense. Now, if you could, and again, I do this sometimes to guests and they hate it, right? But it's a podcast host prerogative, right? I need to predict the future for us. So if you, in let's say 2 years' time, had to identify what the biggest step ups in VR experiences and VR performances are between now and 2 years' time, what's the biggest difference we're going to see in VR equipment in 2 years' time that doesn't exist today?
I would guess something that has something with cloud processing to do, because at least what we see today is like most of like the game engines like Unreal and Unity and those, like they are most of the sim racing titles today, they utilize the old versions of this game, which can't really utilize the newest GPUs and CPUs and like the hardware that you have on a computer. And I think when you're getting at that point where you can enable cloud processing to be streaming image from the cloud down to the headset or monitors or what you have, then you're able to create like a more lifelike or real looking environment, because you have unlimited processing power in the cloud than compared to the local side as you have now. Like even with like the most expensive CPU, GPU, everything you can get, you're still, I wouldn't say like locked, but you are reduced by how well the simulator has been built. So what we see a lot of, like the F1 Codemasters game, for example, I think is using a game engine that is 6, 7, 8 years old or something, and it isn't like an open engine as like Assetto Corsa, for example. So the Formula One games, it doesn't really work or perform that well in VR, just due to the old graphics engine or game engine, that VR wasn't really a thing when it was started or beginning. So what we can now see with like Unreal Engine, the newer ones, or with iRacing or others, is that they're now implementing newer streaming algorithms. I don't know, codes. I'm not a developer, but newer code that is more efficient on how to get the image from the computer into the headset or to the monitor.
So interesting. So the answer actually isn't we're going to see a huge difference in VR headsets. Actually, it's going to be the supporting software that the VR.
Oh yeah, you're going to see something. Yeah, you're going to see something in hardware as well. But I think the biggest change is within software, the back end of it, because that's where the largest limitation are today.
Well, okay. Well, that
like our engineers, for example, on the there's something called Varjo Reality Cloud, which is like, it's a cloud service. It's built for Unreal and Unity, but for like business applications. So the streaming algorithm that our engineers in Varjo have been able to create is more efficient than Netflix's streaming algorithm. And that's the terms of investment or time or things you need to develop your own to be able to showcase the high quality that our hardware can do already. But we are a limited factor by the computer. Like a USB port, it has limited amount of data or power it can transmit through that one cable.
I mean, I feel like gamers generally are already spoiled, but I think they've got a lot of very, very cool stuff coming at them, right? And as a gamer and kind of professional observer of what's being built, like, my goodness, like the experiences that are going to be open to gamers in the next couple of years are absolutely mind-blowing. Now, something I've noticed as a trend is the marriage between sim racing and flight sims. So a lot of brands do both. So Next Level Racing, as you mentioned, Varjo, Track Racer. There's a load of brands that will, the Thrustmaster, Logitech. There's a marriage there because it's gaming hardware and it's all about simulation. And now we're starting to see. We were at Gamescom a couple of weeks ago, and we saw all of the truck simulator wheels that have started to be released, and the panels. All the I actually know very little about it, but like almost like a button box for a tractor is essentially how you would describe it, right? There's a lot of hardware coming out for simulation, and I do wonder whether simulation is going to kind of become a bit of a runaway horse in terms of a gaming sector, because there's so much exciting hardware around it. Like, gamers already love hardware, but actually, if you compare somebody who plays CSGO or Dota to somebody who's a sim racer, if you've got CSGO or Dota, you can upgrade your PC and your mouse and your keyboard, and that's it, right? Whereas as a sim racer or a flight simmer, you never ever finish. And any committed listener to this podcast will be bored to death of me saying that phrase. You never finish your rig. So I wonder if, because of that, and let's be fair, because of the commercial implications of that, those sim games are going to, be head and shoulders above, are going to start to perhaps catch up with your big kind of first person shooter titles in terms of popularity.
Yeah, I think so. Just looking back at like the just like my own experience, like the few years I've been sim racing, like when I started, there were like it was Logitech, Thrustmaster, and Fanatec. They had like one wheel or one series each of them, and now just look a few years later, I think for myself as well, like really getting my eyes open to like there's actually something within gaming which is just like not just mouse and keyboard or Xbox, PlayStation control. They're actually able to replicate or have controllers to improve the inputs inside the game. Like Euro Truck Simulator, for example, it's been out for what 10, 15 years, or God knows how long it's been out.
Yeah,
A really old
long
game.
time.
And there haven't been any truck sim wheels for it at all until now. Mosa suddenly comes on track. It's just like, hey, this is a wheel. We're seeing if you look at the top games on Steam, I think Euro Truck Simulator 2 is still like one of top 5 or top 10 or something.
And it streams well. People watch it.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous how many people, or not so ridiculous, but it's like amazing how many people that actually watches this. And as you say, like farming sim, you have esports farms.
Yeah.
Did you see so we were blown away by the farming simulator league. So they had like a Gamescom. You were there, right? So you probably saw it. But they had a.
No, I wasn't there.
Oh, you weren't there. There was somebody from Varjo? No. Did anybody from Varjo go?
No.
Oh yeah, okay, man, it was awesome. But yeah, there was a stage, right?
Yeah.
And it was called the Farming Simulator League, and they had this huge LED backdrop, this big shield badge thing, and then they had the 2 desks. You know, like CS:GO. You have like the 2, like the desks of players where you have like a bank of like 4 players.
And
they were like
doing tasks and
turbo farming, right? And you just saw like in the middle of this huge screen, and these tractors just like smashing it over hedges to get to the next place to plow, or and I'm not belittling it. I just don't understand the terms, right? But it was and it was full. It was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people watching people playing.
Yeah, no, and I think it's due to accessibility as well, and it's also like understanding the content. Like when doing sim racing or flight sim, you need to have some knowledge about like what is racing or what is flight sim, like what are the rules of flight sim. Like with Euro Truck or with farming sims, like you're plowing a field or sowing a field, or like it's quite easy to understand for everyone, and it's not easier to get into it and be engaged in that sort of community.
Yeah,
like I play farm sim myself and enjoy it, like relaxing sometimes. Like I grew up on a farm and it was like relaxing driving a tractor and stuff, but it's still like it's just like a different feel to it. It's more like relaxing, laid back, but it still have that sense of progression. At least for me, like Counter-Strike and League of Legends, like I played CS 1.6 like years ago, like hundreds of hours, but you don't get the sense of progression in those sort of games or titles as you are in Farm Sim or Euro Truck or Sim Racing or Flight Sim. You can like play that you have a company or something like that to create something and build more inside the game.
So I wonder if this is a conflict then for VR brands, because it sounds like we've identified perhaps a trend towards games used for relaxing. So, if you go onto onto Assetto Corsa Content Manager and you look at all the servers that are running, the ones that are always the most popular are the ones that aren't running races. It's the Nordschleife tourist lobbies, and it's the what's it called? Is it Shatuka Revival?
Yeah, Shatuka Revival project.
Right. So you have all just the open world driving.
Yeah,
right?
Driving in traffic.
Just for fun, just driving in traffic, right? So there seems to be this push towards like this relaxing kind of just passing the time, just enjoying. I've maybe got some music on or whatever. Do you think one of the challenges that VR has to overcome is the fact that it's an additional step between I fancy doing some gaming to actually being gaming? Is you have to get the headset, plug it in. Presumably there's some firmware that you need that will pop up. You have to set it going, or maybe there's some calibration to be done, or there's just a few extra steps. Do you think that's something that presents a challenge to VR?
Yeah, I think so. At least, again, like talking on my own experience, like with the Oculus or with the HP, even like you need to launch like 2 different softwares, maybe as a like some drivers to update. But at least the experience that I have with Varjo, not to like to run commercial and towards that, even though I work there, but still like it's plug and play, and like you need to install one software once, and then you need to upgrade your graphics driver, and you need to do that anyway if you're doing VR or not. But it just works, and that's one of the benefits as well for us creating it for our customers, because time is money in the business world, and we really need to have something that works every time you turn it on. and you don't need to update 10 different things, and then you lost tracking of something and whatnot. But for sure, like VR is, it can be something extra. It can be a hurdle for someone to like plug it in and pick it out instead of just like get in the ring and turn on the monitor, for sure.
And do you think then for the opposite group of people, like not your casual gamers, but those high level sim racers, the esports racers, do you think you'll see more esports competitions breaking into VR then in the future?
I think so. That's one of the things I'm trying to work with as well, and something we're doing with Alpine Esports or Formula One Esports team as well, is trying to get both understanding what the hurdles are for like an esports team. If you're driving 7 hours a day, your eyes might not benefit of using VR, since it's like in your eyes the whole time. But still, it's I would say, to be gentle, I would say at least most of the esports competitions today, they are sponsored, sadly. So if you're doing the F1 esports official series, there's one brand there that sponsors everything there, so you need to use their products. Same with GT3 or Rensport or something like that. Like, there are companies that have paid to either be their licensed or paid to have their products there. And one thing I hope will change in terms of VR, no, in terms of sim racing, is that people can use the equipment they would like to use themselves. And you're not necessarily faster with VR or faster with like more expensive products. Like, you can see some of the guys using like an iRing board and like a kitchen chair, and they're still beating you by a second by lap. There's always going to be those people out there.
Yeah, don't we know it? Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Rune. I really appreciate it. It's been really good to get like an insight into kind of VR generally, as well as obviously what you guys are doing at Varjo. So, final question before we wrap up, and I'm sure you're happy to answer this, but what's the next product? Give us the stats. I want the release date. Can you give me the price? Where is Varjo heading?
Where's Varjo heading? So we're always looking to improve our product. So I was thinking we'd see we're improving something in mixed reality. That's definitely what separates us from others as well. So I would think you would see something that is even bridging the gap or getting more realistic than it already are. That's sometime in the future. But as with all larger companies, we're always looking to try to look into the future, see what sort of hardware that is available and what sort of use cases that people want to use it with.
Well, as a man standing on the edge of the flight sim cliff, I am very excited to see what you bring out. I'm still trying to work out how I build a rig that I can quickly convert from sim racing to flight simming. I've been on Reddit. I've got some ideas. I really like helicopter flying, so I'm trying to, how do I get the collective there, not in the way of the gears? There's a lot to work out, but yeah, I'm excited for this mixed reality journey that Varjo is going on, because I think if you could sit in a rig and see anything from your wheel and pedals all the way to your collective and joystick, if you're flying, and also then see out through a cockpit window to fly. Oh my goodness, like I don't know, quit my job and just do that all day. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, we can join Varjo. We do this for a job every day. So,
well, yeah, I mean, maybe. Don't
sorry,
listen to
Grid
this, Grid Finder investors.
Yeah, no, it is like fun for me. Like I wouldn't say like I game every day, but like I have some opportunity to like either create content for like our Instagram or social media pages, or even like I need to learn a software before having a call with a customer, for example, to understand the software and what the sort of issues they are having. So it's like a perk with the job. And I'll send you some pictures of the rig when I moved into my house, what I'm getting that now in a couple of weeks, on how I have I also do helicopter simulator.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
And the sim racing. So,
yeah, perfect.
Give you some pointers there.
I need to get the blueprints. Yeah, and it's interesting actually. We have a rig in the office which was given to us by our previous sponsor on the show, Track Racer, and it's frustrating given that it is about 3 meters away from my desk, how little, given that we work in sim racing, that we managed to sim race. It turns out there's so much to do in sim racing, we don't have time to do sim racing, which is very, very frustrating. But
Yeah, you need
so
to put
fully-
aside some time on Fridays after hours or just before you leave. Like we had that on the Dimension 10 startup. We had like a 20 minutes after work on Fridays to do social things in VR.
We should
If
do
that were
too.
like
Yeah, that's a good
play
idea.
stuff in VR, like badminton or ping pong or
that sounds fun.
whatever, but do something like friendly competitive where you can play multiplayer
That
and then
sounds
like
really
do
cool.
something around it and then have some alcohol with it as well. That it really it was
Alcohol
fun.
and
It was
VR.
fun.
That sounds like
Alcohol, VR, and driving.
potent recipe. Yeah. Okay. Well, Liam, we'll do Friday afternoons. We'll do sim racing and VR, sponsored by Varjo. Yeah. Get that headset in there. Cool. Well, Rune, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your time. It was great chatting with you, and I'm very, very excited to see what comes next.
Sounds good. Yeah, perfect. Thanks for having me. It's been super cool there to be and talk about myself and Varjo. So let's see what the future brings.
See you soon.
Bye bye.
See you soon.